All right. Hi, all. We're moving right along in our course. Yay. So I want to talk about a couple of different controls for the Wacom tablet and its physical tabletness, what the different buttons are and what they can be used for. Just know that all of these are customizable, and it might take you a little while to realize what you like, what you don't like. But in general, my tablet is pretty much set up to the default with a few um, things that are different that are honestly my recommendations. So let's just go over this really quick. So on the left hand side of your tablet, you'll see 4 buttons at the top, a wheel, and then 4 buttons at the bottom. And most of the time, the very top button is your change settings. So it'll immediately on Macs bring you into your Wacom tablet in the settings, and you can see that you can change a bunch of different things. But before we get into that, my second button is settings, like general versus change settings. And if you all want to know what your tablets are set to, and since they're kind of like public property in a ways, even though I think our class uses them the most. Some other classes might have access to them as well. So this is a really good thing to use just to make sure, like, what is my tablet oriented to? How do I quickly change it to what I want it to do? So that's the settings button, not change settings. Just shows you next to it, like what all 4 of your express keys are sent to, what your touch ring is set to, and then your pen. And then if you want to change any of these things, like, oh, I don't like that my pen does double click and right click, you'll just click preferences and it'll take you to this menu that we're about to look at. Okay, so that's just a really good way to see what's already set up when you sit down. Okay. So when I click on my top button, that brings up my change settings. And what you're able to do is there's a lot, but I'm going to show you just the basics. And if you're a techie and want to figure out all the nitty gritties, I'm going to let you all do that. But I want to give you the most important and what we'll be using the most, in our course as beginners and intermediate tablet users. So my top is change settings, just like you saw. Settings, precision mode, display toggle, and then shift, command, opt, pan, and scroll. I hardly ever use the bottom, so I like to keep the top 4 buttons like the most important, and then I use my touch ring for like everything. If for especially people who are using their tablets to just also navigate their computers, these are a little bit more important. But for me, this is the default kind of as they come way to that the tablets are most likely already set up for you. Touch ring, you have a lot of different choices according to what your preferences are. These are my personal recommendations. Now, if you're somebody who's new to Wacom, this could be a good place to start. But again, it's a personal preference thing. So different strokes for different folks. Mine is scrolling for scrolling up and down, zooming for zooming in and out. And then I have it cycling my layers and brush size, because what I'm always using my tablet for is digital drawing and painting. So for me in Photoshop, so for me, this makes the most sense. If you want to get into those nitty gritties that I mentioned, but I'm not going to go over, you can go through all your on-screen shortcuts, brush tools. I mean, there's a lot that you can customize, but I personally don't think these are going to be necessary. So yeah. All right. So functions and Intuos Pro is kind of how you change your express keys, touch ring, and on-screen shortcuts. If you go to touch, this is how you can change the touch modes of your tablet. I hardly ever use my fingers on the tablet. So for me, I have the least experience with these. That's just a personal thing. But if you are somebody who wants to also kind of use it as a touch screen, you can do that. And then the Pro Pen, which you might find that you're doing this the most, is you can change your pressure sensitivity to be either, if you're someone who's kind of light and delicate with it and you're kind of starting out, or just in general are pretty light with pens or pencils in real life, you might want to put it onto the softer so it's more responsive to what you're doing. And if you are someone who's kind of heavy-handed, firm allows it to be a little bit less responsive to what you're, you know, putting down. So, and you can go to the customize option and really get into the nitty-gritties of that as well. Then you have your two big buttons on the side of the pen. You can change these according to if you want it to be an eraser or whatever. These are the default ones. You can also customize the pressure sensitivity of your eraser. You can change this if you do not want it to be an eraser and you want it to be something else. And then mapping, I'm not really going to go over because I think for the purpose of this, it's not as important. But if you're again techie and want to discover all the settings and controls and whatever, this could be a good thing for you to look at. Okay, so those are just the basics as far as the settings panel. All right, so moving right along. Precision mode is kind of important for, thank you for telling me I needed to put my pen on the tablet to use it. So let's say I want to be a little bit more precise and I'm going to hold down my precision mode and I'm going to it's going to give me this kind of like highlighted view of what I'm doing. It allows me to kind of see it a little better. If I want to make my brush size smaller, and kind of, it just kind of gives you a focused view of what it is you are doing. I think this comes more in handy when you're working on a lot of different layers, I guess. I don't know. I hardly ever use it. I know some people that absolutely love it. I tend to be somebody who zooms in when I want to be precise and zoom out when I don't want to be precise. But it does enable a little bit of like, I don't really know how to express that, but it allows you to concentrate on what you're doing on the area. It does make it even maybe slightly more smooth as well. So it adds a little bit of smoothing to it. Yeah, makes it a little more sensitive to what you're doing versus kind of like loose and loosey goosey. Now, if you're somebody who wants to change the smoothing on your own, smoothing is something I don't suggest to put up like super duper high because it'll make what you're doing kind of delayed and slow. But one nice thing about doing smoothing in Photoshop is if you're trying to like trace a particular shape and you want it to just be a little bit more precise and responsive to what you're doing and like, hey, I'm going over here. It will smooth what you're doing a little bit more. And there's really not a good way for me to show you what that looks like on the screen, but I'm gonna say it's harder, slightly harder, I guess, to draw circles with the smoothing off versus the smoothing up a little bit because it makes it more precise, kind of slows down what you're doing a little bit more. I particularly use it when I'm like really tracing along an underdrawing that I've done and I want it to just be a little bit more responsive. The higher you turn it up, the more responsive it'll be to what you're trying to achieve. And you can experiment with that a little bit because again, you have to kind of feel it to experience it and to believe it. Oops. I don't know. I just did that. That was not smart. Sorry about that. It's hard to talk and draw at the same time. All right, so moving right along. Precision mode kind of lets you see something, adds some precision to your mark making, allows it to be a little easier to highlight what you're doing and see. It's pretty fun. It's pretty nice. All right. So my wheel settings, this is how I toggle between my desktop and so display toggle, which is very, very nice to have. And then the center button in my controls over here is how you change what the settings are from the 4 settings that you set up. So if I want to zoom in and out, I'm gonna click it until it says zoom. If I want to cycle through, if I have multiple layers, that's how I'm going to do that. Although most of the time I do just click it, but if I have like 5 billion layers, I do think it comes in handy. Brush size, I probably use the absolute most for making it smaller and larger. But if you don't have it set up this way or that's not intuitive for you, just know that the bracket keys on your keyboard, kind of above where enter is and below delete, this one is to make it smaller, and this one is to make it bigger. And I forgot that I have my smoothing on, which makes drawing that really annoying. Okay. So you can also use your bracket keys, but I personally like to use my keyboard as little as possible.